I've had an extra 12 years, and hopefully I'm going to have more years. So, and it's thanks to that family and to that man. And so, yeah, I'm getting emotional now because it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? The gift of life. My name's Karen Rockell, and I had a liver transplant in October 2010. I was doing okay, and then I started to get ill with what I thought was flu. It was just before Christmas, and the flu just didn't go away. And after Christmas, I was just so exhausted all the time. In the end, my father insisted I went to the GP. I was trying to say, no, I can fight this off, I'm fine. And so the GP did some blood tests. I had a phone call the next day saying, we've referred you to the hospital. And I was thinking, that's a bit strange, for a scan. And that within a couple of hours, I had a phone call from the hospital saying, come for a scan the next day. And that really freaked me out because I thought, this is all a bit quick. And I had a scan, and they said that we can see a problem with your liver, and we're referring you to the consultant at the hospital. That consultant appointment was actually only 4 days later, and they hospitalised me, and they told me that I had an autoimmune condition and that I would probably need a transplant at some point because my liver was actually in quite a bad state already, even though up until this flu I hadn't really had any obvious symptoms or anything that had indicated I was unwell, except that I looked like I had a suntan. So people used to say, have you been away on holiday? I used to say, no, very randomly. So I found out later that was jaundice, but I had the sort of jaundice where you look well rather than the one where you look sort of yellowy, green and grey and awful. So after hospitalisation, I was on medication, and that kept me going for about 5 years. And then I started to deteriorate a bit, and I was referred to a transplant unit, and they changed all my medication, and I did okay again for another 4.5 years. And then luckily for me, in an annual scan, surveillance scan, they spotted something that they thought was just a little bit different to the previous one. And so I was referred for an MRI scan, and they discovered that I had a tumour in my liver. So I was immediately assessed for transplant, put on the transplant list. And then I spent a couple of weeks on the transplant list, and I was taken off the transplant list and given chemotherapy to try to get the tumour under control. Back on the transplant list, then back off the transplant list because I had to have more chemo because the first lot hadn't worked at all, and this tumour was growing rapidly. And it was 6 months later before I received my transplant, after 9 calls up to the transplant unit. The cancer was the shock. I mean, that was just not in my dictionary of ill health. I wasn't expecting that. And it all happened so quickly after that, from the scan to being diagnosed to being assessed, all within a couple of weeks, and being on the transplant list. And then getting my first call 2 weeks later. Not because I was on the super urgent list, because I wasn't, but because I'm blood group O, and at the time, so we're talking a long time ago, probably 18 months on the wait list, and they knew I wouldn't make that. And so I was put down on the list for a circulatory death transplant, which is completely different. And that's why I had so many calls, because it's a much more random approach to transplantation compared to the other one. So I had my first call within 2 weeks of being on the transplant list. So all the way up to the unit, got myself all ready, and then they said that the liver wasn't good enough, and then had to sort of get myself home again, pick myself up, and then carry on. And I think that was where the challenge started. I had to really just concentrate on putting it to one side. And to be honest, when we had the assessment, we were given the opportunity to look, say, at the theatre where they undertook the transplants and go into intensive care and have a look. And I chose not to do that, which, because I felt that the only way I could really cope with this whole thing was to actually think of it as being a spare part from Halfords, sorry Halfords, and take all the personalised thing out of it. And so I tried not to think about the fact that somebody else was going to become very ill and were going to be passing, and that was going to be part of my journey. I kept it as focusing on it as that. And I tried to just keep going on with life, keeping myself busy when I could. During that 6 months, my health was deteriorating, and my energy levels were reducing as that time went on. And the chemotherapy actually took it out of me as well. And I lost all my hair, so I was bald, and I'd lost a lot of weight as well. But I still tried to get out and walk every day. And I was quite into art and crafts, so I tended to do that when I couldn't do anything of the things that I was used to doing. And I just sort of got into a rhythm, I think, of doing things when I could, and then when I crashed, I'd crash. As I say, it was my 9th call, and it was in the middle of the night as usual, sort of herring up to transplant unit, prepping, did all the bloods, ECG, all the rest of the tests, and then they sent me off down to X-ray. And because it was the middle of the night, nobody in the hospital anywhere, and they let me walk down there. So my husband and I walked down to X-ray, and we sat in A&E, and we were just chatting actually about what we were going to do when we got home, because it was coming up to half term, and we were just considering whether we perhaps needed a break and perhaps to do something at half term, even though it was October. And we got back to the reception area of the ward, and this panicked nurse said, "Where the hell have you been? We've been looking for you." I said, "Well, you sent me to X-ray." That's where I was. And they said, "The doctor's waiting for you." And so I went in, and they said, "It's going ahead." And then it was just manic after that. It was one person after another coming to see me, getting into my gown, having a shower, getting into my gown. My cancer nurse, who had just come on duty, had seen my name on the board, and so she'd run the whole length of the corridor to try and see me before I went in. And that was when the emotions started. And I'd been absolutely okay until she came to say good luck. And then I just got so emotional, and it became real. So my husband was holding my hand, and I was on the bed, but holding his hand, and we were walking round, and we got to the doors of theatre, and he said goodbye to me, and he said, "I'll see you later." I can remember seeing him starting to walk down the corridor as the two of the staff were just saying something, and that's it, gone. I was gone. So I didn't do the things that other people talk about. It's just going through the doors and being introduced to the team. I never met any of them. I was completely gone. And then my next memories are waking up and surrounded by machines and somebody talking to me. And I was in intensive care at that point. And I couldn't swallow, and I felt that obviously there was something in my mouth, and I was trying to work out what was going on, and then this person sort of appeared in front of me saying, "Hello, Karen, how are you feeling? And me nodding and sort of thinking, okay, I'm here, I'm out of it. And it was just all a bit surreal, really. And at that point, feeling a bit hazy, but suddenly realising I'd actually woken up again. And I tried to speak and couldn't at that point. And then they said to me, you've had your transplant, it's gone really well, you're doing really well, we're really pleased with how you're recovering, and would you like to see your husband? And I sort of managed to sort of blink or nod or something, and then there was my husband sitting next to me. It never, ever occurred to me that I wasn't going to get through it. Never occurred to me at all. And I just didn't dwell on it. I was just taking each day as it came, in terms of keeping myself as well as I could, given that I knew my energy levels were depleting. And, just coping with every time my phone rang, because you never knew when it was going to be them. And so, of course, every time the phone rang, your heart went and your stomach leapt, and it was like, and then it would be, salesman trying to sell you something or whatever, or a friend, and then you'd get over that, oh my goodness, it's the call, and then you'd chat. So no, I just always had this belief it was going to be okay. That I'd always believe I was going to be okay. It just never occurred to me. So I didn't say goodbye to anybody. Didn't do it. I did write letters. But I wrote those right at the beginning of the 6 months of my waiting, and I didn't. I should have really redone them, because things change, but I didn't. I stopped that part, and I just thought, yeah, bring it on.
What does your donor mean to you, if you could describe?
Everything. Obviously, I wouldn't be here without him. All I know is that he was a man and he was 45. That's all I know. After my transplant, my husband and I wrote a thank you letter to his family. Sadly, they chose not to read that letter, and I have written again since, just to update them, but they've never chosen to read the letters, which at first I was really disappointed about. But as time goes by, I understand that for some people it's so difficult for them, having lost a loved one, and for some people it's reassuring, and it's great to know that their life wasn't in vain, and then for other people it's just too painful. I understand that. Part of me thinks it would have been nice to have been able to say thank you and then read the letter, but I'm glad I wrote the letter, and I'm glad I wrote the subsequent letters, because I think at least I did say thank you. It has to be the hardest thing that you ever do, writing the thank you letter, and I know a lot of people struggle with it. There's lots of conversations in the peer group about that, and to be honest, I think even if it's just a little card that says thank you, it's better than nothing at all for the families that would like to hear. But I think it was another part of the acceptance and the moving on for me, to be able to say thank you. But every time, well, especially certainly at the games, there's a lot of discussion about the donors, and you always know in the back of your mind that special person gave you this gift, and you do the most you can with it, because I've had an extra 12 years, and hopefully I'm going to have more years. So, and it's thanks to that family and to that man, and so yeah, I'm getting emotional now, because it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? The gift of life. I'm sorry, I'm going to cry. For me, because I thought 45, he probably had children. And I think, I got quite emotional about that because I was thinking there were probably children involved in that, and that's why I hope at some point, perhaps when if he had children and they grew up, they might be able to read those letters because they're going to stay on file, available, and perhaps as adults they might want to know, whereas the immediate family at the time didn't. I don't know. I think we owe that to our donors to actually make the most of what we've been given, and to do something with our lives. And that can be on lots of different levels, but it's really important to work at keeping yourself well, and that's mentally active, and enjoying what you've been given.